The term green energy transition has become a popular buzzword in recent years. The S&P Global defines the green energy transition as a shift from fossil-based systems of energy production and consumption, including oil, natural gas, and coal, to renewable energy sources like wind, solar, as well as lithium-ion batteries. In Africa, the issue is not primarily carbon emissions, but rather access to energy solutions. According to the International Energy Agency, about 43% of Africans lack access to electricity, with 86% of them in sub-Saharan Africa. However, there has been a growing trend of investments in the renewable energy sector in Africa over the years, according to the World Bank. Bringing it down to the country level, we focus on Zambia, a landlocked country in southern Africa with about 19 million people. Statistical data by Macro Trends suggests that close to 60% of Zambians do not have access to electricity, let alone clean energy solutions. Most of those without access to electricity are in the peripheral or far-flung rural parts of the country. The government, through the Rural Electrification Authority, has taken several steps to increase electricity access to rural parts of Zambia. Some of these efforts include connecting rural parts of the country to the national grid, as well as provision of solar, wind, and mini hydro energy solutions. Zambia has for many years been rocked by a severe energy crisis due to its over-reliance on hydroelectricity, which is highly susceptible to climatic conditions. The global green energy transition therefore provides an opportunity for the country to diversify its energy portfolio. I caught up with a well-renowned energy expert in the Zambian energy landscape and two industry players to get their insights on the green energy transition and energy outlook for Zambia and the Southern African region.
As you know, Zambia has been depending on the hydro. Even up to now, we are depending on hydro about 80%. And we have been taught major lessons because of climate variability. So we've been pursuing different pathways to renewable energy. For solar energy also, the country is well endowed with sufficient radiation. Actually, much of the arbitrage is going to be rooted in solar energy than any other energy. So to answer your question, solar energy is assisting us in mentoring our transition to green energy. And but there is a caveat to that. It depends to a larger extent on the availability of the battery technology, which is still evolving. It's not yet fully developed. Everyone that is doing solar, they're able to use it during the day, and then during the night, you won't be able to use it. The hope that solar energy gives us, that is the hope that we have globally and also as a country, and we've got very good chances of succeeding at solar. The only handicap that it cannot give us 100% reliability because of storage capacity challenges. You find that, for instance, Zambia, we are using a lot of electricity during the day, but during the night, because we are not well industrialized, during the night, we are not using a lot of power. So we can export that to a country that requires a lot of power even at night, because their industries are working even at night. So Zambia, by virtue of its geographical location, its resource of water bodies, just from hydro itself, by now it should have been a net exporter of electricity, a sustainable net exporter to the entire region, just based on hydro alone.
Of course, Zambia recently has recognized, especially governments that have been there, they've recognized that obviously energy is one important sector, and specifically speaking to the electricity sector, where we've seen that there's been not much happening since we got independence. And so we've also recognized that we are highly dependent on hydro. But if you look at the policies that have been put in place, for example, the National Energy Policy of 2019, you see that the government has put in place some sort of goals they would want to achieve in 2030. And so there are various aspects of the policy that has been put in place that they've tried to really tackle these concerns. Obviously, regulation, incentives that have been given. And so government has really put in good policies in place and regulation as well. That I give them kudos. But the reason why we've been lagging behind is because obviously we lack implementation in some of these things that have been brought forward. The other issue may be, which has really troubled the smaller players in the industry, has been access to finance, obviously. And if you look across the sector, majority of the players are SMEs. And so if you, for example, pick 3 companies from, let's say, 2010, you will notice that they've not really grown. And the issue has been obviously access to finance. And so they've been able to work around what they can.
It's a very pertinent question for time that we're in, and government certainly has a very key role to play in this regard. I'll just zoom back a bit and just paint the picture for, I think, how the solution looks like in terms of the green transition. So broadly speaking, from my view, I think of the solution existing at the intersection of technology, public policy, and economic fundamentals. So that is what solutions lie at the intersection of technology, public policy, and the economics that often drive this. So I think a key thing to underscore here is the government's role in setting consistent, accurate policies and sound policies that encourage investment, that drive interest towards the sector is very, very important. We've seen the likes of this being done in other places. For example, what you see also influencing how much more renewable energy comes on board is the price comparison. So you have your levelized cost of energy, for example, that until recently was not in favor of renewable energy, for example, solar and wind, because it was much more cheaper, for example, to just have a coal-fired power plant and to have your core energy being cheaper in terms of levelized cost of energy.
So one of the ways is obviously investment in renewable energy projects, and these may differ according to the needs of the communities around, or the target audience, like I mentioned. And so as a private sector, obviously we look for money where we can get it, and then also we develop ideas on how these business models can specifically work for those communities.
So another element that's obviously key, particularly in the 21st century and the time we're in, is being able to harness new technologies to solve the challenges that we have now. And so we've been fortunate in the past 10, 20 years to have new technologies that have been developed, and those have just been more cemented over time. For example, an element that comes in quite important is how do you harness intermittent technology like solar and wind? So because you never really know how much you produce on a particular day, for example, you need to be able to generate steady supply of electricity. And so battery technology is one of those key elements and technologies that are quite important now. In this time, you have also an element where we're moving away from just focusing on supply side. And so oftentimes talk about generation. How do you bring in new generation? But also there are demand side responses. And so how can we create virtual energy by just increasing efficiency? And so in a time like now, for example, we can create and make and build buildings that are much more efficient. So if you can cut the consumption of electricity for a building by 80%, by 20%, by 30%, that becomes even more handy. Now, being a data-driven world, we have seen the ability of industry players to be able to harness the aspect of data. And so artificial intelligence as well, in terms of energy, we're able to have what are called demand-side response. And so in your home, for example, you have energy that's turned turned on and off automatically, and thereby creating virtual energy and saving on power.
From the discussions, it is clear that addressing the energy deficit at both the country and regional levels requires effective policy design and implementation. This can be achieved by enacting supportive regulations and incentives that encourage investment in renewable energy. Additionally, it is essential to improve financial mechanisms and access to funding for renewable energy projects. One approach to accomplishing this is through government-led public-private partnerships and the promotion of joint ventures. Moreover, it is crucial to prioritize decentralized renewable energy solutions for rural areas, as these communities are disproportionately affected by the energy deficit. Governments in Southern Africa should also encourage local manufacturing of renewable energy technologies, as this will create jobs and contribute to poverty alleviation and national development. Investing in research and development for tailored renewable energy solutions and strengthening regional cooperation for interconnected renewable energy systems are also vital in addressing the African energy deficit. Lastly, both the government and private sector players should actively raise awareness about the benefits of renewable energy. These are just a few strategies that countries in Southern Africa and the continent as a whole can employ to leverage the green energy transition and tackle the debilitating energy deficit.